ABC News Now. Good to know.
Welcome to this edition of Now You Know. I'm Rachel Martin in New York. So it's being called beer diplomacy, the audacity of hops, and red, light, and blue. Today, President Obama will attempt to mend racial fences when he welcomes Harvard scholar Henry Louis Gates and Sergeant James Crowley over for a beer to talk about the arrest of Gates at his home by Officer Crowley that has since raised the issue of race relations in this country. It was all magnified when the president, in a press conference, said that Crowley and his fellow officers had acted, quote, stupidly. So, what will they be drinking? This is the most important question. Joining me now to talk about what's on tap is the beer sommelier, Matt Simpson. Hey, Matt.
Hi, how are you, Rachel?
I'm doing fine. First, I got to press you a little bit on your credential. You decided to call yourself the beer sommelier, or is this a real-life credentialing process to get this moniker?
To make it, well, there is one called the Cicerone program, but I didn't feel as though the broad American public could wrap its arms around a new concept, and so I called myself the beer sommelier instead. But there are credentials behind it. Not only am I a BJCP certified beer judge, but I write Ask Beer for Beer magazine, and I taught Beer 101 at Emory University. So there's some
you know what you're talking about,
expertise.
Basically.
There's some expertise behind it. My slogan is actually my cellar of expertise to your table of knowledge.
There you go. So we're going to put your knowledge to the test. We understand that the beers being served today at this very important summit will be Blue Moon, Red Stripe, and the beer for every occasion, Bud Light. Let's talk more about each of these beers, what they mean. The president is drinking, you know, the American tradition, going with the Bud Light. There's a long history of this beer, but in a short kind of package, describe how far this beer has come.
Well, really, to tell you the truth, I've been asked why I think the president, and this is all speculation really, because I'm not in their heads. I can't speak to people's motives or personal tastes. I can only speculate as to why the president has chosen that particular beer, and I'm guessing it's because he considers it to be every man's beer throughout the United States. But the fact is, the unfortunate thing is that both Anheuser-Busch and Miller Coors are both owned by conglomerates outside the United States now. So technically, all three beers that are being drunk at this beer summit
is less American than we thought it was?
Yeah, well, it was actually taken over by a Belgian company called InBev last year. So all three beers come from outside the United States.
Is nothing sacred?
And it's, well,
that's a whole other conversation about globalization.
As the new phrase goes, it is what it is.
It is what it is. Officer Crowley, we understand, is going to be drinking a Blue Moon, which is also a foreign beer. As you mentioned, all three of these beers now foreign beers. Officer Crowley has selected a Belgian beer. What does that say about Officer Crowley's taste and his beer palate?
Well, it's a Belgian-style beer. And of the three, it's probably the most adventurous. It has the most flavor. It has the richest palate profile. It has some coriander notes to it. It's got a little more body. It's got a nice fluffy white head. Probably goes better with food than the other two. So who knows, maybe I think I could work with Officer Crowley on expanding his horizons into the real craft beer world.
And I understand you're supposed to serve this particular beer with an orange garnish?
I wouldn't.
Oh, you would not?
No, I wouldn't, actually. From my understanding is that a fruit garnish with most wheat beers were the creation of a pub owner up in New York someday. I mean, I may be wrong about the exact origin, but if you need fruit in your beer, chances are you shouldn't be drinking that beer.
Fascinating.
And
all this time in the Hefeweizen with the lemon, I always thought that was what I was supposed to do, but no.
It's a marketing ploy.
Oh,
unfortunately, it's just a
Corona
marketing
with the
ploy.
lime?
Yeah, well, you know, I think they put lime and salt in it because you need to buffer the flavor any way you can with a beer that's that light.
You and I are getting on a completely different, we'll have to book an entirely different segment to talk about this. Let's stay.
Anytime, sure.
Henry Louis Gates, a professor at Harvard, is going to be drinking Red Stripe. This is a Jamaican beer. Tell me about Red Stripe for people who haven't had it.
Well, it's got a long and storied history in Jamaica, but it's really Jamaica's version of it's what we call a pale lager. And they're relatively similar in just about every country that produces them. In Japan, you have Asahi. In China, you have Tsingtao. In the United States, we have Budweiser, or more appropriately, say Yingling out of Pennsylvania, which is the oldest brewery in the United States. But no matter where you go on just about every continent in the United States, there's a brewery producing at least one light pale lager, and they serve a purpose. There's nothing wrong with these beers on whole. They're light, they're refreshing, they're easy to drink one after the other, crisp, as I said, refreshing.
Good on an August afternoon. I want to close quickly and ask you about peacemaking. Sure. Do you think this is a good idea, bringing folks together who've had a rift and making nice over beers? Is there a history of this in American diplomacy?
Well, while I can't point to any specific correlation between peacemaking, the official peacemaking process in the United States and beer, I can tell you with a certain amount of authority that I know what they're drinking when they get home from the process. And there's one more point. Yeah. Is it goes to, if beer really is the beverage of the layperson in the United States, think about any bar altercation that's happened throughout the years, and the first thing that's asked, or the first statement that's made, the first declaration after the peace has been made is, can I buy you a beer?
Beer, making peace, not problems. Beer expert Matt Simpson, beer sommelier, thanks for joining us today. To learn more, check out our website, abcnews.com. That's all we have now for this edition of Now You Know. I'm Rachel Martin in New York. Thanks for watching.
ABC News Now. Good to know.